If Saturday morning cartoons fueled your imagination as a kid and powers your action figure collecting now as an adult, then you're in the right place. Thanks for stopping by, and welcome to Saturday Morning Toy Collector.
And if you like my content, please consider subscribing.
Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to my video series called Meet the Collector, where I sit and I talk with somebody in the toy community about their collecting habits and how they collect and like all about their collecting. Today's guest needs absolutely no introduction. You guys know Bill from Dorklair. He is definitely somebody that I have watched for so many years. Has influenced me in so many ways and definitely one of the inspirations for starting my channel. So thank you so very much, Bill, for being here. I super appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me. I will always welcome the opportunity to talk toys.
Oh man, awesome. Yeah, thank you so very much. I appreciate it. I know that we've only like bumped into each other a couple times at Legions Con, and you're just somebody I would always just want to I want to sit down and get like a beer with this guy. I just want to sit down and talk to him about like toys and everything. And just, I watch all of your streams. I watch your reviews. Man, it is just like, I feel like you're like, I'm a big Mythics collector. So I feel like you're very integrated into the Mythics world. But I collect so much other stuff and I know a lot of collectors do too. So we're going to talk about everything. So we're just going to jump right in. I've got 20 questions for you and we're going to see how this goes. So, be as open, honest, as candid as you want, or just say, hey, I'm not answering that. But I think you already know all the questions. I've already sent them to you. So let's start in the past. What was your favorite figure growing up?
So my favorite thing when I was a kid was definitely Star Wars, the old vintage Kenner Star Wars stuff. And there was a point where I was pretty young when Star Wars came out. And then by the time Empire came out, I was old enough to have already had a lot of the early figures where you could kind of feel the improvement and you could kind of like feel how like they were getting better. And then by Return of the Jedi, they were just so awesome. But like still standing out to me was that moment when I got that Bespin Han, that for some reason, I don't know, that figure always seems so sleek and just like such an upgrade to the original. And
yeah, the first Han had like a weird head. He had like a weird shape going on.
Yeah, and a lot of the early ones, it was just there was progress, there was improvement, and so you kind of got that upgrade feel. So I'd probably say if it's a pure action figure, that Bespin Han is up there for me. Yeah.
That's really cool. How old are you by chance?
I'm 48. I was born in 76.
Yeah, me too. I'm 48. I was born in 76 in March. And so I never saw Empire in the theater. My best friend.
Yeah, I never did either.
Yeah, my best friend's dad took us to go see Return of the Jedi, and we got very lucky that the theater that he took us to was showing A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back before.
Nice. Oh, wow.
And so my first entry into Star Wars was seeing all three films at once on a Saturday. And
that's crazy.
My mind was blown. And even to this day, it's hard for me to sit down and watch one of those. I like to sit and watch all three of them.
Yeah.
So I definitely remember, Star Wars figures being some of the very first. And I don't know if you had this experience, but I certainly did. I also had, we didn't have internet, of course, so it was the rumor mill. And I remember having Boba Fett from Return of the Jedi, and then having one of my friends keep telling me, oh, my brother's got the Boba Fett that the backpack launches. And I'm like, that's a thing. Like, I want that one. Like, why do I not have that? And now I realize like that was never a thing. But even back then, it was just like, rumor mill was rampant,
right?
Yeah, Star Wars too. Is that why, this is not one of the questions, but bonus question, is that why like at the end of all of your videos, or you're like, and may the force be with you, did your channel like start out as like a Star Wars thing, or did you just always like Star Wars?
My podcast, so Dorklair started off as a podcast, and it was SH Figuarts Star Wars, one figure a week. We would talk Star Wars news and SH Figuarts Star Wars news specifically. And back then they were cranking them out a lot. And so there was like a backlog. We started that in 17. And there was a backlog, and we were working our way through the backlog. And so the first like full year of Dorklair podcast was all Star Wars. And so that was our sign off at the end. I would say, may the force be with you. And then that just kind of has stuck with it, and it stayed throughout, at that point. All right. So it's 2017. And then a year later, 2018, at the end of that year, I started doing videos. And then eventually we started doing live streams, and I was kind of I was like dual publishing. I've kind of fallen off. I haven't published the podcast in a while. I did the Toy Tubers last year, and I was publishing that on the the Libsyn stream, the podcast stream. But anyway, long story short, it just kind of carried over and carried through into it, and I've just kind of always said it, and now it's like a thing.
Yeah. No, I like it. I like it. Even though, yeah, it's tough. It's been, it's hard being a Star Wars collector these days, and so yeah, it's rare to see like Star Wars related stuff on your channel. But
Yeah, and it's like a good reminder every time. It's like a good like little reminder to myself, like it's all about Star Wars when it really comes down to it,
yeah, absolutely. Was there like a dark period of your collecting, like where like as you go through like maybe teenage years or young adulthood, where you like fell off of collecting and then you started back up? Some people have that happen, and then some don't.
Yeah, I did. So there was a point probably around 87 where like those kind of toys, like action figures, I just wasn't interested in. I kind of like I I always loved figures, but it was more like I want to do older things. I want to get a BMX. I want to, and then some things video games kind of, I kept playing video games, and then I also was still building Lego at the time. But like I wasn't collecting those toys. And Star Wars was, it had its own dark period. And then
Yeah.
by the time it came back around with figures and stuff, I was in college. I didn't have a lot of money. I was interested. I bought a couple, but like I wasn't collecting figures. And the main reason was because all of my collecting was all focused on Magic the Gathering from
Mm.
when I started playing Magic in 94 all the way up through. I still collect today. But it basically up until I think it was maybe 2012, 13, 14, somewhere in there. My buddy who had worked at Hasbro and who was getting me super deals on Magic, he
Nice.
left his job there, and then that kind of died down. Um, and like then is around when I started kind of getting back into figures.
Yeah, like I know some people like never stop, or they say they never stop. But yeah, but it's about the same thing for me. Like when video games kind of took over, when I got my first NES, like that's when I started like trailing off a little bit, and then
Yeah.
still played video games all through high school and college, and then yeah, kind of got back into it when I started. My first job out of college was advertising, so I've always worked in design and advertising, and so I had a little bit of money and started getting back into it. Yeah, and Power of the Force was like a so was it the Power of the Force line? Was that the Star Wars figure line that got you back into like?
I mean, not even really, because at that point in the 90s, like I said, I was only collecting Magic. I bought a couple figures here and there,
Mm-mm.
but it wasn't until around 2014. And a couple things there that happened. One, I became a dad, and that just like pulls on those nostalgia strings. You start looking at old photo, you just like you get family nostalgia and just like generational nostalgia and stuff. And so I at that point I was like, you know what, I'm kind of slowing down on. I don't spend a lot of money on Magic anymore. I'll buy a couple things here, but I'm not buying like boxes and cracking packs and like just building up, like collecting sets and stuff. So at that point I was like, you know what, I'm gonna get on Craigslist and see if I can find some Kenner, see if I can find some vintage Kenner. And I
Nice.
bought a lot at like a local guy. Some guy's kid was probably my age, and there had been a box that had been sitting in his garage for years. It was all dusty and crummy, and he was selling it. So I bought it. It was like a couple $100, and it had like it had a ton of figures. It had cases. It had a couple vehicles. It had other stuff. It had like it had a Jetfire in there. It's like it was
Ooh,
broken a
nice.
little bit, but it's like I have that Jetfire over here. It had some, some Motu stuff, just like a hodgepodge of stuff, and that kind of like it was all just dirty and nasty. And so
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I want to like kind of restore these and get them looking nice. So I started on Reddit, and that kind of got me down the rabbit hole of like, okay, there's this whole action figure subreddit that is like people collect like modern figures, and it was right around the time that the Black Series was maybe like a year
Oh,
in.
right.
So then I was like, okay, these are like in stores. I can go hunt around and like find some new figures and experience like what action figures are like now. And then you get down the rabbit hole of, getting into communities and chatting about it and um watching reviews and like all that stuff. And I just kept collecting. I found figure arts and yeah, and the rest is history. And I had been podcasting at the time. In 2015, I was podcasting. It was the app is still around. Actually, it's 10th anniversary. It's wild. But it's called Star Wars Card Trader. It's basically Topps trading cards in an app, and you get like your
Okay.
daily
Yeah.
credits, and then you open packs. But the coolest thing about it was there's trading in app. So you could trade for cards and you can
Oh,
trade
that's
back and
perfect.
forth. And then there became like an aftermarket for these cards where you could like buy a card on eBay, and then you would just like trade them like a common, and they would like trade you that card in the app once you bought it. And like there was this whole world of it, and it was like challenging to complete sets, and there were strategy in terms of how you save your credits, how you pull packs, strategies for trading, and all that stuff. So like somebody was like, "Hey, somebody should do a podcast on this," and I was like, "Hey, I'll try it." I had never done that, and so I was doing that podcast from 2015 to 2017. It had slowly kind of like morphed into just a general topics and general stuff with a little bit of this. It was called the Trade Federation podcast.
Oh, I like that. Trade Federation. I
Yeah,
like that. That's
exactly.
really cool.
Yeah, and it was a lot of fun. And then once the main guy who started it, he just really was not in a position to like keep doing it. He just didn't like his schedule just changed completely. So I decided, I don't want to like try to keep this thing going without him. So I decided to start thinking about my own, and that's how I really like put a lot of thought into the name, the Dorklair, which is what I kind of refer to this room. um, and so that's kind of how the Dorklair started.
Oh, very nice. Very cool. So it wasn't one particular line. It was just it was still Star Wars adjacent.
I mean, the thing that if you want to really put a pin on what it was the Black Series. It really was,
Oh, okay.
because it was like, vintage Kenner's a different thing in terms of like modern collecting. It's collecting vintage toys. But if you really want to think about like what got me buying toys that are being like made and produced and sold in stores or sold online right now, it was absolutely the Black Series.
Very nice. Yeah. I happened to be in we have like three local Targets, and I happened to be in the one that was like closest to me sometime last year, like maybe last summer, and they were renovating the store, and they were moving all of the like they were working in the toy aisle, and they were moving all the shelves, and so they
Yeah.
were shifting all the shelves, 10 feet one direction. And so they were in the toy aisle, and they happened to be like pulling up one of the shelves, and I happened to be walking by, and this guy had as people, I don't know, like the poor man's layaway, like somebody had like put the
Stashed it
Star Wars
underneath.
Black Series figure like underneath one of the shelves. And it
Yep.
was literally like glued to the floor. I don't know if it was a cleaning solution, but he ripped it off of the floor, and he like threw it in his trash bin that was like next to him. And it was Black Series. It was the first wave, and it was Darth Maul. The figure was still in it. The figure was
Nice.
perfectly fine. The top of the front of the package looked brand new. It was the
Yeah,
bottom, the back was like
that's funny.
tore up. And so I took it out of the trash can, and I went up front. It had no barcode on it because that
Yeah.
was on the back. And I was like, "Can I buy this?" And they were like, "Oh, that's garbage." And I was like, "I want to buy it." And they're like, "Yeah, like would you pay $5? And I was like, sure. So the guy like manually entered $5 for like toy, and then he saw it. So I have it like I have it up on my
Nice.
shelf, and I love it. Like I love that I still have a Darth Maul in the package, but it's only good from the front. You don't want to look at it from the back. From the back, it's complete trash. No, but yeah, I remember the excitement around that line. You know, finally, you know, Star Wars breaking that, you know, 4-inch and going into the 6-inch world, and I remember that being a really big deal. So, do you have any rules or guidelines for collecting? Like me personally, like my deal that I made with myself is that I really only want to focus on like modern remakes of toys that I had as a kid. So that, you know, toys that were based on like Saturday morning cartoons or afternoon cartoons. Do you have anything like that with your collecting now as an adult?
No.
You have any guidelines? Whatever.
No. I mean, I try not to overindulge. I sometimes fail with that kind of rule. And you know, I'm always shifting, and some things like I will sell off, and so it's I mean, there's no real rules. It's just kind of like where it takes me. But like once I'm like collecting if I like pick a new line and I'm going to collect that line, I might have a rule where I'm like, okay, if I'm going to collect these if I'm going to collect these 1/18th Joy Toy turtles, I'm going to get rid of my NECA stuff. You know, I'm going to try this new thing and go into that, and like just try to like, I guess the one rule is like try to stay focused as much as I can. But I like to dabble and try new things and experience new things. So yeah, I don't really have any hard fast rules.
Yeah, my wife has always asked me when I go to buy something, she's like, "Did you have that as a kid?" And I was like, "No, this is a Mythic Legions. They weren't around when I was a kid." Yeah, I know. And yeah, she always reminds me of my rules. Do you set a budget for yourself? Weekly, monthly, annually? Do you have to do you keep yourself to a budget? I have to.
I don't I don't like have a budget in terms of like a number that I follow, but I am always trying to avoid like often failing, but always trying to avoid having too much stuff. And so I'm at the point where I do have enough stuff where like I try to sell stuff as I get more stuff. So it's like I try to I rotate the collection. I try not to spend too much new money on it, and not put like I try to like sort of reinvest the money. Like if I'm like I just sold my I just like I said, I just sold that whole NECA Turtles collection that I had been working on for a couple years, and you know, it didn't make my money back, but like it cleared up a bunch of space, and it kind of like rejuvenated what I'm doing is saving up for the dragon from Mythic Legions.
You've got to. Yeah, it's all dragon money at this point.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, like I do try to make sure that I am selling regularly to make sure that I'm not like just hoarding.
Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. 100%. Same here. Like I run out of space. Like if I can't display it, that's kind of like another one of my rules is if I'm to the point to where like I buy something and if I open it and it goes in a tub, I didn't really need that. If I can't display it, like I don't need to buy it. So
Yeah.
I'm like, that's one of my
another rule I have, just this is not even really specific to figures, but just a financial rule that I have is I never have credit card debt ever. I always it's always paid off every month. So like that's like another thing that's like keeps me from overspending. It's like there's only so much I can spend because I have to keep that credit card to zero.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a super good rule. What percentage of your toy hunting is in store and online these days?
At this point, there's almost none in store, at least not in like retail stores. The only thing I still walk through Targets and I still look, but like I don't ever, there's not really, it's very rare where I'm like, I hope I find this specific thing. It's usually just browsing. I just usually look around and I never buy anything. And then, but I do try as much as I can to go when I go to conventions to spend money there. And like, so the only real in-person like shopping I really do is at conventions, and then everything else is online.
Okay. Yeah, there's only like a few things that I get in stores, like, the occasional like McFarlane Batman figure. I love Batman. He's one of my favorite characters. So, McFarlane's making them. So, and so like occasionally those, I don't collect Marvel Legends. So occasionally I'll see a Spider-Man who's also one of my favorite characters. And I'm like, oh, that's a really cool one. I need to pick that up. That looks fun to pose. Or, the occasional NECA figure, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'll see in stores and I'm like, oh, I'll pick that up. That's part. I've got a budget that I set for myself, and I'm like, oh, okay, I can pick that up. But yeah, I would say probably 80-90% of my it's all online, of course.
If I could trust it to be like, oh, I would find vintage collection in stores, which by the way, I've fully switched over to vintage collection. I got rid of all my 6-inch stuff, and now I've been getting rid of all my 112, my 1/6.
Right.
So it's like all vintage collection for me now. But if I were confident enough to be like, you know what, I'm not gonna pre-order this, I'm not gonna like buy this online. I'm just gonna wait and get it in store. But there's just nothing on the shelves at my stores. There's
Yeah,
there's
same.
nothing ever. So it's like I can't. I mean, now I could go there and there's like Cobb Vanth is there, but it's like I don't even really I never really wanted that figure. So it's like just that
Yeah.
one figure. But like I never see a wave. I never see anything at Target and that's Target is like the one that's close to me. Walmart's a little bit further. So yeah, there's just nothing there to shop to be like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna regularly go.
I think I put all of my eggs in one basket with Star Wars, so it's kind of like all like 6-inch at this point. Whether
Hmm.
it's a mixture of like Hasbro, SH Figure Arts, Mafex. Um, but I think if I had known where like Hasbro was taking the 3 3/4 inch line, I think I probably would have stuck with that. They're doing a lot of world building right now, which I love. Like these larger play sets are
Yep.
fantastic. I do have the Razor Crest HasLab, but outside of that, like I would love that Jabba's Palace, but I'm like, geez, like I only collect 6-inch. Now I have to buy that, and then I have to fill that thing out. If I'd
Yeah.
have known, I think I would have stuck with 3 3/4. But
And that's kind of how it happened. Like I got the Razor Crest, and I had been, collecting a little bit. Even from the beginning, I was still kind of like buying. It actually was like at conventions where I would buy older 3 3/4 stuff just to add to the collection, just because there was, you could find characters that like weren't in the Black Series, especially back then. And then, I always had a little bit of a 3 3/4 collection. And then the Razor Crest really was, I think that was when it shifted, and it just, the scales tipped over for me toward that. And then I was also starting to collect, 6 scale, like Hot Toys. And I was like, why am I collecting 3
right, yeah,
scales? You know what I mean? I'm
right,
like
right,
I'm like kind of heavily, I'm probably spending equal amounts of money on all 3. There was like a point, right? And then so I was like, okay, let me get rid of the middle one so that I have like my toys that are like toys with vehicles and stuff, and then I have my Hot Toys, my like display pieces. But even then, now I've like one of the things when the dragon was announced, yes, it's all going to come back to the dragon.
as it should.
Um, I was like, okay, I think it's time to decide I need to not collect 6th scale, and I ended up selling all my Star Trek 1/6, which are amazing figures, but that was harder than the Star Wars ones, honestly, because there's really not much else Star Trek.
Right.
And so yeah, I started selling all my 1/6, and it's almost all gone at this point. I'll keep a couple, but yeah.
Yeah. I did sort of the same thing. I think at one point I probably had around 40 or 50 Star Wars Hot Toys figures. And then they just took up so much room. Then I was, buying detolfs like crazy, which, you can't get
And you
anymore.
don't want to throw away the boxes, right?
Right.
And those take up a freaking boatload of
Yeah.
space. Like
I had
it's
so much storage, yeah, with all that. And like
crazy.
even me, like I didn't even want to put their accessories anywhere else other than the box. So if I wanted to change something, I had to go upstairs to the closet, get the box out. It was a pain, but
Yeah.
it was a whole thing. But we ended up needing a new liner for the pool, and those are things like and the installation is like stupid expensive. So I ended up selling off my entire Hot Toys collection to pay for my liner and the pool installation. And then like slowly over the years, I think I maybe bought like maybe 20 more. Like I was like, oh, just maybe I'll get one here. And then I ended up with about 20. And then I got to the point where I was like, you know what? I'm really tired of cutting my own grass with a push mower. I want a riding lawnmower. So I sold them all again. And then I
Yeah.
bought a riding lawnmower. So,
That's one of the like one of the things about collecting is like you know, you're not gonna necessarily make your money back or make a bunch of profit or anything, but like you kind of have this stuff that you could sell. It's almost like a little mini savings account in some ways where you
yeah.
can just sell stuff. Like I got to get a new car this year, so like I'm gonna, you know, on top of the dragon, like the car is a completely separate thing that I've been saving up for years. But like I'm gonna ramp up savings for that too. So like I've been actually doing a weekly sale. So I've been doing something from the collection. Maybe it's a bunch of figures like that NECA Turtles. And I'll just take great pictures and line them all up and then just list it on eBay as one auction and let it run for 7 days. And then
Yeah.
that following Sunday, I pack it up and ship it. And I list the next thing. And it's just a nice cadence of just like selling and just, you know, having this like almost like this little extra income going.
Oh yeah, I start that in the summer. I start that around May, like when the kids get out of school, to save up for Legion's Con. The last 2 years, that's what I've
Yeah.
been doing. Is like
That's, yep.
I start selling every week up until about October, and then I cut myself off, and I'm like, okay, whatever I've got, you know, like this is what's going to Legion's Con, you know.
I want, my goal is that by the time the dragon releases, I want to feel like toy starved almost. Like
Yeah,
I want to just collect minimal. I'm calling it my toy diet, and I just want to collect
nice.
minimally for the next year and a half or however long it's going to take for that dragon to come out. And I want it like, you know how like I see all these people getting their Cat's Lair, the Super 7 Thundercats
Yeah,
Cat's Lair, and they're all
yeah.
like, "Oh my god, I can't believe I have this thing. I'm excited for it, but like it's also this burden." You know what I mean? I don't want
Where do
like
you put it?
yeah,
Yeah,
and I mean like if like I want to be at that point where the dragon comes in and I'm like, "Oh my god, finally something." And it's going to go right in this huge space that I have that's empty, that's
yeah,
been empty for 6 months or whatever, you know, and
yeah.
like like have the time to like you know, spend with it and like really mess around with it and everything. So, yeah.
Really
I
enjoy it. Yeah,
that's kind of my goal.
I
Minimize.
have Eternia back there,
Yep.
and there's really nowhere else for it to go but the floor. Like it's just, I even built my shelves around it because it just kind of,
Yeah, I can see
I was
that. Yeah.
like,
That's
there's
awesome.
nowhere else to put it. Like I have no space for that thing to live. My boys could have, I don't know how I failed them, but they never really cared about action figures. But my daughter loves them, so she
Yeah.
comes in and takes my He-Man down. She plays with the castle. She's like, let's play with the butt. Give me the bee guy. I want the skeleton guy. And so
Mm,
we play all the time. And so
nice.
it's kind of cool that it sits in the floor. But yeah, like it's the same thing. I would love to get that Cat's Lair. I have nowhere to put it. I
Right.
have no space. Like
Yeah.
I'd rather just give me a poster of the front of the box. I'll frame that, put it on the wall. Yeah, let's do that.
Just
So you
watch
talked a little,
videos.
yeah, right. So you talked about your dork lair. Where do you keep your collection? Where is that room behind you?
So this is a basement room. So my whole basement is finished. We have a small house, but we have a ton of space because of the finished basement. We bought the house and it was fully finished walkout basement. And this is basically an office. It does not have any windows, which is great for a collection because then you don't have like
Right.
sun beaming on like something, you know.
Yep.
Um and yeah, it's just like an office, like a medium-sized office. It could be like a, you know, it theoretically it could be a spare room. It just doesn't have windows and it's, you know, legally not doesn't count as a bedroom. So yeah, and it's full. Like I, you know, I don't have much space left. So again, it's a lot of trying to clean and organize and minimize.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's a you know, it's just a finished room office.
Very cool. Yeah, you got to make room for a basement. Yeah, for the dragon. In Florida, we don't have a lot of basements.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's it's not a very common thing, I guess, with all the flooding and
Hmm.
potential flooding or whatever. Yeah, they just it's not a common thing. We all have fireplaces though, which makes no sense. We don't need them.
That's funny.
I probably already know this question, but it was something that when I was asking my friends, they were like, "You definitely got to put this on there." So it's not going to apply to everybody. But what percentage of your collection is open? Like you're going to open and mess around with it, and then what is like you keep in the package, like keep mint on card?
I'd say it's probably like 90%. There's not many things I keep on card. In fact, there's very few things I keep the packaging for anymore. Again, because of space. Um, I do have some like carded figures. Like I'm looking at my wall over here and I have some stuff hanging up on the walls. Like I have a couple Super 7 reactions. I've got a
They have
couple
beautiful
vintage
card
collection
art.
figures, stuff like that, like hanging on the walls. The one thing I do collect in package is I have a double set of Figura Obscura. I have my one open, and I have a full complete set of Figura Obscura in box too.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I was going to ask about Mythic Legions in particular. I always feel like I have to keep all the packages, but then after a year and all of my shelves in my closet are filled up, then I'm like, I don't really need to keep these. So like I'll
Yeah,
go through and I'll throw out a year's worth of. What about you? Do you keep the packages for all your Mythic Legions, or
no,
you get rid of
absolutely
them?
not. No, I
Okay.
yeah, I get rid of them. I generally keep like a stack of those clamshells though,
Yeah.
because when I'm doing reviews and I'm popping and swapping, even if I'm opening some other figure, they are like perfect for just dropping figures in and putting all the
Hmm.
accessories and just having access to them. So I had to keep a stack of those like around. But I throw the card out. I throw the plastic insert where with the blow mold that is like the figure shape. Um, I keep the name card. I keep
Right.
the little card that's in there, and I use that, like, I put that in a bag with the figures or, like, if I have the figure on display, I put that in the bag with the accessories, and those are sort of organized in bins or trays. So yeah, for legions, yeah, there's no way. I have so many legions, I would never be able to keep them.
Yeah.
And it stinks because now they're doing more and more nice packaging, like
Oh
the
yeah.
the con exclusives, the Cosmic Legion stuff. They're in like the nice boxes and whatnot,
Right.
and they're a little more worthy of they're
Yeah.
of keeping because the mythics, it's everyone is exactly the same, right? And
Right.
it's just
Yeah.
got like a different side card or whatever. So yeah, but yeah,
Probably know the answer to this question already, but I'm still going to ask it. What's your preferred scale?
um it's funny, like I'd probably say 1/12 scale because Mythic Legions is my favorite, but it's probably a coin toss between that and 1/18th, especially now that I'm like more and more into Glyos, which I kind of equate more with like 1/18th scale, even though some are like
Yeah,
three
much smaller.
inch or,
Yeah.
but like my favorite line of Glyos toy pizza, that's all pretty much, you know, vintage Kenner size. It's all like 1/18th scale stuff. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't think I could pick. I mean, if I had to pick, it would be 1/12 because I would, if I had to pick any line that I would just collect only that, it would be I mean, I guess technically it would probably be Figure Obscura if I had to pick a line, but I'm saying just like Four Horsemen in general.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, you have your videos alone about Glyos have made me want to dip my toes in. I don't own any. I've never jumped into that field, but uh, I do remember when I saw the announcement that Four Horsemen were making Glyos like I think is it Infinite? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
I was like, oh my god, like this has got to be like right up your alley. Like you're just literally blending like two of your favorite things together.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I was super pumped to see that. Um, and there was like there's part of me that also hopes that they do more like Glyos figures, like they're Infinite Legions, they're going to take a character from O'Neill, the original Glyos, and they're going to make that character on their format, right? They're going to make that character on the Legions build system. I think it would be cool if they went back to their original plan and they did like a one-off of a Mythic Legions character as a Glyos compatible figure on the Glyos build system. Like I think it would be cool going both ways.
That's really cool. Yeah, that would be really cool. Again, I know the answer to this question, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. What's your current favorite toy line?
It's Legions. Can I just say Four Horsemen?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, pretty much anything they put out. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Do you have a favorite Mythic Legions figure? Like, can you single out one as your favorite?
Right now it's probably Frankenstein's creature. I'd say that's probably my current favorite. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I had to pick a Mythic Legions figure, Lord Bardrick is one of my all-time favorites. The paint on that, like it is such a good figure. But yeah, I'd say if I had to pick one, it's right now it's Frankenstein's creature.
That is like an absolutely fantastic like figure. I have the sticker on the back of my phone, and I bumped into Corn Boy at the last Legions Con, and he had the T-shirt on that whatever day that was, Saturday or Sunday, with the Frankenstein's creature, and I was like, hey, I have that on the back of my phone. He's like, hey, I got that on my T-shirt, and that was my first interaction with him ever, meeting him, talking with him, and I was like, while I have you here, I was like, I draw comics, and I did a whole graphic novel series on Beowulf. It's one of my favorite stories of all time. And I was like, I think we really need a Beowulf and Grendel 2-pack. And I said, this is kind of like right up you guys' alley. And he's like,
I feel like that's got to be high. You know, Jeremy talks about the list they have. I feel like Beowulf has to be pretty high on that list.
Yeah. He's like, well, I can't say it's not going to happen. Thank you. So anytime I see that question pop up on Facebook, like on the Cabal, they're like, what do you guys want? I'm the first one that's going to be like, Beowulf and Grendel 2-pack. Like, I want a brute scale Grendel. I want to really, it's like my very first custom that I made from Mythics was a Beowulf figure.
Nice.
And so, yeah, I would very much love, that 2-pack. I know it's got to be coming one day. It's got to be coming.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
All right, we're at the halfway point. We've got 10 solid questions down. Do you want to take a break here and like plug your channel? I mean, that's like everybody knows your channel, but you can give us a little place like where we can find you. What do you do each week? Do your live streams, all that kind of stuff?
So Dorklair is the YouTube channel. I'm on Instagram at the Dorklair because some girl named Claire has just Dorklair, which is brilliant, Dorklair. I like that. But I've actually messaged her and I'm like, would you? And she never responded. I don't think she. I think it's an abandoned account, honestly. But anyway, so yep, those are my two main ones, and then I have a Facebook group. I do spend a ton of time on Facebook, but like I don't do a lot of like I just kind of repost the Instagram stuff on the Dorklair Facebook account. And then I spend a lot of time on my own, William Drewnowski account on Facebook, in the Dorklair Facebook group, in the Mythic Legions Cabal. And then as far as the YouTube channel goes, every other week we do a live stream, and on the channel I do recorded videos, mostly action figure reviews, mostly Mythic Legions at this point, but like, I dabble in other things, and if I have time, I try to do other things. Honestly, those Joy Toy Turtles was one of the biggest videos in terms of like everybody was watching that video. It's one of my most successful videos in the past year. But anyway, yep. And right now I have a finger injury, so I haven't been doing reviews because I'm trying to heal this thing up properly, and I can't grip well. So I've been trying to do like more just topical videos. Like I did my top 5, like predictions for the Dragon campaign. I did here's what the year's gonna look like for Mythic Legions, like, get ready.
I've shared that with a bunch of friends already, that exact video, because I have a buddy of mine locally. He's like, what's the year looking like? Like, where do you think the big waves are going to fall? And I'm like, just watch this video. Like this, like Bill lays it out, and Jeremy's
It's
already like
pretty
said
brutal.
yeah, it's pretty accurate. Plus, a few things he doesn't know about, and I'm like, yeah,
Yep.
it's gonna be tough.
Yeah. So every other week live stream, and then I've been trying to once a month do a Glios live stream episode where I have somebody from the Glios community on, like a Glios toy maker. We're trying to get Matt Dowdy on. He's not online very much, so it's kind of tough to like really get in touch with him, and he's super busy with making toys. But
Yeah,
we'll have somebody else on as well pretty soon. So
very cool.
yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of like why I'm branching out with this video series, is because I've done my channel now for like 2 years, and it gets expensive, like when you're buying all of your own figures for review, and
Mhm.
only recently, I would say probably in the last like 6 months, have I got enough attention, like from like some toy makers, some companies, to be able to send me stuff for review. But for the most part, it's all I'm footing the bill,
Yeah.
and so for everything. And so like I wanted to branch out to where I can have like a regular, more long form series. That's something that's not like financially like I have to invest in to do it. It's just
Right.
just time. So cool, awesome. Well, that was a good little break. So you kind of alluded to this earlier, but do you collect anything else besides action figures?
Yeah. I do collect Magic the Gathering still. And some other trading cards, but primarily Magic. And I don't really, it's not a lot. Like it's more like I get together quarterly or so, maybe once every 3 or 4 times a year with my old school buddies, and we play. And so I still have decks, and it's still just about like, okay, a couple sets came out this past year. Let me buy some play sets to put into those decks, and that kind of collecting. I don't really buy vintage Magic ever. I have a large collection of vintage Magic, and I'm more likely to sell that stuff than to buy it because it's so expensive, at least the good stuff. Um, but yeah, so I do collect cards in that way. I do collect books, whether it's like just paperbacks for like I like to read certain kinds of stories I like to read on paperback. Certain kinds of stories I like to read on um like a nice print of a book where it's got a nice hardcover, um, nice illustrated version or something like that. Like I'm reading a book called The Buried Giant, and it's like a really nice copy. And it's just, I don't know, there's something about sitting with a beautiful book and just like reading a whole novel like throughout with a really nice piece. So I do collect books. I have some old books. I have some rare books. I have a bunch of paperbacks. I just have all different kinds of books. Um, and that's probably it really. I collect comic books a little bit. I actually have stopped. I've stopped buying um almost all
Hmm.
physical comic books lately because the place I was getting them at shut down, and there's nothing really. It has to be very convenient for me to like
Yeah.
go, every other week or so to like go pick up comics. So lately I've been reading comics on the device. Like I've been reading the DC Absolute Universe. I've been reading that
Hmm.
on Comixology. The only book I've been getting lately is the Savage Sword of Conan every other month,
Oh,
which is,
nice.
like that's, and I have to get it mailed to me because otherwise I'm just not gonna like go get it. And I just buy it online and someone mails it to me, which is probably like, it's like not very uh efficient, but
Right. Yeah. 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 I draw comics, so I don't. It's hard for me to read comics.
oh yeah,
Yeah, it's really hard. Like a lot of people are always asking me, like at cons and stuff, like when I table and I have books for sale, people are like, well, what are you reading right now? And I'm like, I don't, like, I just don't have time. Like I really don't.
right,
It's hard. And being an artist, I also feel like I really need to enjoy every panel because I know what goes into drawing every panel.
right,
And I feel very guilty. Like if the story's moving along at a very fast clip and I flip the page, I'm like, oh, you got to go back. You did not enjoy that page. Like it's like my anxiety kicks in. I feel like I have to enjoy,
right.
you know, because I know like when you spend 10 hours working on a panel to get it just right, like, and you think somebody's going to read across that in like 3 seconds and flip the
That's,
page.
it's funny you say that, because that's kind of how it got for me with Hot Toys, where it was like, I don't even want to open this up because I don't want to experience this without spending 2 hours with it, like at this
Right,
moment
right,
of opening and like really just slowing it down. And it's like, I don't have 2 damn hours to open a figure. It's just
right.
like, where am I going to find that time? And it's like, okay, I'll just stop collecting them.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So right now I am reading Absolute Batman. I'm enjoying
Yeah,
that like crazy. That is so
it's
good.
pretty good, right?
I love it. It is incredible. I have to say the suit's growing on me. I didn't really care for it much at first, but I'm digging the changes that they made, and I understand why.
Mm.
And I'm reading Batman Gargoyle of Gotham when it comes out because we're now like I want to say we've got to be going on 6 or 7 months between issues 2 and 3.
Oh, wow.
Issue 3 was supposed to come out in November. It was slated to come out in April, but then I think it was like November and still hadn't
Hmm.
come out. So December, it keeps getting pushed back. I think Raphael Grandpa is like drawing it as he goes. So they didn't finish the entire thing and release it, you know, each
Okay.
month. I think he's drawing it as he goes, and he's super popular right now. So Gargoyle of Gotham is really good as well. They introduced a new, if you haven't read it, they've introduced a new Batman villain. So
Oh,
that's kind
okay.
of cool.
I'll have to check that
It's
out.
yeah, if you're a Batman fan. And then I read anything Hellboy. So Hellboy, Spider-Man, and Batman that's my holy trinity. I have all my little bases covered: DC, Marvel, and Indie. But yeah, so anything Hellboy comes out, I'm like, yeah, let me get on that. But yeah, I don't read a lot. I'll pick up a trade here or there, but yeah.
Yeah. And that's another thing. It's like, I've I'm an English teacher, and I just, like I need to, as just somebody who's always been a reader, I need to be also reading novels,
Mhm.
and I have a lot of books that I've bought that I haven't read. I have a lot of books that I haven't bought that I want to read. I have a lot of books that I want to reread. And it's like, I have to like force myself to dedicate time to it, because
Right.
just, 2025, there's just so much going on in our lives. There's just distractions
Right.
everywhere. And so, yeah, I'm less likely to read comics right now, and much more likely to be, um, you know, sitting in my chair with my book.
Yeah. Yeah, I collect Lord of the Rings books. So I am a sucker for them. Like anytime I go to like a garage sale or
Mhm.
a used bookstore, if they have a copy of Lord of the Rings and I don't have it, like I'll pick it up. So I've got like various copies of sizes, illustrated, you know, all kinds of different. I just can't not buy them. I
Yeah.
used to read them every year, but I got to the point where I was like, do I want to take a week to read this book again, or do I want to take a read a book that I've never read? So
Yeah.
it got to that point. So
Yeah, I'll reread them every few years, maybe like every 5 years, I'll reread Lord of the Rings.
yeah. All right. So nothing is going to touch the pre-order of the Dragon. I know that that's the biggest pre-order you're looking for this year, but after the Dragon, like outside of the Dragon, what's a pre-order that you're really looking forward to this year?
Um, I wanna say Armies of Ashmore,
Mm,
uh, the Defenders of Eden line by Matt Rodriguez. Those like big dinosaurs that Four Horsemen is
mhm.
doing the production on. They did the
Yeah.
sculpting and the paint and
Mhm.
the production on those. I got one in hand recently. I got to borrow one for a couple days, and
Nice.
they're awesome. They're gonna be so
Yeah.
cool.
I'm very excited for those. I don't know if his wife still does her toy reviews, but I know she used to be like really big into like Motu toy reviews, the Huntress. I
Yeah.
don't know if she still does.
Mhm.
That's how I found out about that was through her toy
Right.
reviews.
Yep.
Yeah, I saw him at Legion's Con and got to pick one up and play around with it, and I was like, ooh, this is gonna be fun.
They're nice. They're really
Yeah, they're
they're
beautiful.
a great take on the big chunky sort of like ogre scale kind of character, and they have a little bit of that like almost 80s colorful charm,
Hmm.
but they have a lot of really detailed sculpture and paint
Hmm.
work. And like when you see one repainted, like some of those ones he had at Legion's Con, it's like these go gritty really well. Like you don't they're
Yeah,
not like sculpts that are like specifically gonna only look good if they're cartoony like they are. That like they are awesome. So I ended up buying this was all the Kickstarter stuff. I ended up getting a couple blanks that I'm gonna paint
Nice.
as well. Yeah.
Do you do a lot of customizing?
I like doing it. Again, time. I don't.
Yeah.
I think I did 2 full figures last year. I did like a purple color of a cosmic tusk tusk. What do you call it? The tusk sentry, and then
Oh, okay. Yep.
I did like somebody's custom head on there. And then I did for Larry, I did a gift. I painted a custom Rhaegor that was like my own kind of take on Rhaegor. And that was a gift for Larry. And I had intended to make one for Chris, but I ran out of time.
Yeah, very nice. Um, so what is a figure or a toy line that has not been announced yet that you would love to see made?
I've always now this is kind of weird because I'm lately I haven't been a big fan of Super Sevens Ultimates line, but I have always wanted, probably for the past 5 years at least, maybe the past 6, 7 years, I've always wanted to see them take the original Star Wars Marvel comics, the droids series, the Ewoks series, and then maybe even like the Tartakovsky Clone Wars, like all of like the weird Star Wars animated and cartoon stuff, like the weirdo stuff, like all of that stuff. I think Super 7 would knock out of the park. I think they would crush it on a line like that. So
Absolutely.
like just like Ultimates, Star Wars. I don't want to call it animated because I want them to do like the Marvel comic stuff too. But yeah, like that kind of like Star Wars retro or vintage cartoony characters,
Yeah.
and
That
just
would
do
be
them super
fantastic.
faithful to those
Yeah.
shows or those comics.
Yeah. I do a live show every Saturday morning called Double Jointed with a friend of mine named Greg Schmerber, who you may know from the Cabal.
Yep, I know
And
Greg.
nice. So we had the opportunity to interview Brian Flynn, and he was a great interview. And he said something to me. He was like, "I want our toys, whether it's Silverhawks, Thundercats, Transformers." He's like, "I don't care about the transformation. I don't care about the articulation." He's like, "I want them to look like they stepped off of the page, G.I. Joe. I want them to look like they stepped out of the cartoon screen." He's like, "That's what we're going for."
Yeah.
And he was like, "And when we see a sculpt or we see the final paint," he was like, "when I see that, if it gives me that feeling that it leapt off the page or leapt off the screen," he's like, "then we did what we set out to do." And so like I always try to remind my friends that are always like, "Oh, Super 7 doesn't articulate well." And I'm like, that's not what they're going for. Like, if you want that, get Amazing Yamaguchi. Like that's what they're known for. Get Reveltech. But it's like, yeah. So I agree with you. I think that would be phenomenal. That kind of goes a little bit into my next question. So if it's the same answer, just say, "Hey, it's the same. We'll skip it." If you could take a toy license away from its current license holder and give it to another toy company, what license would it be, and who would you give it to? This you may have just answered it already.
No, I mean, no, because it's funny because this is partially the answer, but I would not want Super 7 to make the mainline Star Wars stuff. I would want that to make it its own scale, make it it doesn't have to fit in with anything. Make it fit in with your Ultimates, like put it with that line, right?
Right.
But I think this would be very interesting, would be to see what someone else could do with the 3 3/4 line. Like imagine Joy Toy getting their hands on the Star Wars license. Like, sure, they would be super expensive, but those Joy Toy figures are phenomenal, and I would just love to see them do it. I'm guessing they might not have well, I mean, it's just factory stuff, right? Like, I'm just trying to think of like the volume of sales and if they could handle that big of a property, but like, I mean, I think that would be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I've only just recently, like within the last like 8, 9 months, gotten into Joy Toy. I've bought some Warhammer stuff. I'm not deep into the Warhammer lore. We actually we're a pretty small city, but being the capital of the state, we have like the legislature and the government, and then of course we have a couple of major universities. I work at one of them here in Tallahassee, but we're actually large enough at least to have a Warhammer store, which is fantastic. You know, we're just a tiny little city, but to have that. But I recently got
And they carry the
into.
Joy Toy stuff?
They don't.
Oh, okay.
But like it kind of like it sparked my interest. Like I was like, oh,
Right.
what is this store? So I went in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the nearest store to me that sells Joy Toy that has a huge Joy Toy section is a action figure store in Jacksonville, Florida, which is about 2.5 hours to my east. And they're called Mythic Mountain. They have a big Mythic Legions section, but that's not why they're named that. That's just the name of the store, coincidentally. But yeah, I go in there and I see stuff, and I've bought a few things from them. So I have a couple of Ultramarines and a bike, and their stuff is well made. Like I think
It is.
they're a company that like not enough people know about. And like you're right, if they got their hands on like a major license, it would be like, yeah, that would be pretty incredible. Like I would be down for
Yeah.
that for sure.
I think another
Um,
one would be like, I don't know that this wouldn't be like a license taking. I think it could actually go there, but like Mezco Star Wars, I think would be awesome. And a lot of there's been rumors. I mean, now that they have Lucasfilm products, right? They have Indiana Jones. Like, there's been a lot of rumors and talk about it, um, and I don't think it would necessarily have to be like them taking the license. I think it would have to be like a certain product level, like a certain price point or something, and they could
right.
probably do it.
Yeah, the way I've always understood it is that licenses are giving for scale, right? Like so like Hasbro has the Master Toy license for like Star Wars in the 6-inch scale. But then they could license that out to like Hot Toys and they make 12-inch scale. Like somebody else can't make 12-inch, like not officially. Like third parties
Right.
could come in.
But they do like, so if it's just like a different take, right? Like,
Right.
so I know Figure Arts is an exception because it's not technically available in the US,
Right. Yeah.
but what is available in the US are the Tamashii Nation's Samurai versions. And so like,
Yeah.
so those are pretty much, you know, they're a little bigger. They're kind of 7-inch, but like they're
Right.
in that scale roughly. So yeah, I think it's a matter of like certain parameters have to be
Right.
exceeded. It's like a price point or a certain stylistic take, which is why I think Super 7 could probably, like, I think theoretically, if they pursued it and they had a good relationship with Lucasfilm, they could probably potentially do that, you know, with those cartoon ones.
Yeah, which is probably how Super 7 has the license for G.I. Joes. Like they're taller, they're definitely made from like the cartoon. They're not trying to do modern.
Right. They're not
modern.
competing with Hasbro's
Right.
regular stuff.
What kind of confuses me a little bit about this is I know we're kind of getting off on a tangent, but Haya Toys, you know, they do like the smaller, like the 1/18 G.I. Joes, but they're like almost identical in design to classified series. Like it's like they're using the classified series as the basis for the designs. I don't know if you've seen those, but I think they're probably like 20 figures in or something like that.
Yeah. Again, it's probably like Hasbro's like, this is not really competing because first of all, they stopped making the 3 3/4 figures. But they're the only ones they're doing right now, I believe they're doing, are some of the O-ring figures, which it's a totally different kind of format. So yeah, and I mean, Hasbro's handing their stuff. I think I could see them eventually almost being just an entertainment brand, and almost like everything is like licensed out, you know?
Yeah. I wouldn't mind. I think Jada Toys is getting pretty good. Their Street Fighter line is pretty impressive. Their Cyberpunk line that is pretty impressive with the soft goods. So I wouldn't mind, you know, seeing Jada Toys maybe take a crack at Star Wars 6-inch. That could be fun.
Yeah.
What is your favorite Toy Con and why? Probably know the reason. I've already know the same.
Legion's Con. Yeah. That's an obvious. It is just so different from every other convention. Obviously I have a ton of friends there, and that's pretty much the main thing. It's like I go there and I'm just hanging out with friends the entire time. Whether it's Nate and Trevor from the Legions Lounge, which is another show I'm on. And I kind of hang out with them, and I help Trevor out with his table, and he lets me throw some stuff on his table to sell. or just there's so many people to hang out with. It the Four Horsemen themselves are just always there and available. It I mean, it's awesome. It's a kind of con where you stay at the hotel and it's like you don't need to leave. There's a restaurant there. You can run right
Nice.
across the street to the grocery store, just pick up some stuff and resupply, grab some beers or whatever and come back. And then
That grocery store is
every
amazing. Wegmans, that place is
yeah, yeah,
incredible.
that's a great and that's like I mean, I have a Wegmans up here. It's not even anywhere near as awesome as that Wegmans.
Yeah, no, they're not like a southern thing, so we don't have them in Florida. Like we got Publix, that's all we got.
Yeah, Wegmans is pretty. Yeah,
Yeah, that's a
they don't
big
mess
place. It's like
around.
a mall.
I know it's huge, and it's got like its own like I don't want to say restaurants, but like the food court essentially, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Basically, yeah. No, real quickly because I want to keep this all about you, but real quickly. So like I was all in on the Mythic Legions, the first two Kickstarters. I look back at my Instagram and I cry because I had those first full two waves.
yep,
But then I kind of fell out of them. I don't know. I lost interest, or maybe that there was a big gap between a couple of waves or something, and
yeah,
I just was like, I think after like the second wave came out, I fell off, and I ended up selling them all. And then 3 years ago, I'm a huge Headless Horseman fan. I love the story. I love the cartoon. I love Tim Burton's movie adaptation. And so when I saw that Figura Obscura, I was like, I want to get that. Like, I don't have any Mythic Legions. I remember what they're like, but I want to get that. And I got it. And instantly I was like, oh crap. This is, dang it. Like, this is what I give up. I remember how awesome they were, and they're still awesome to this day. And this is amazing. And it was the fact that that figure came with a horse, and it was
mm,
perfect. And so, like, I got that in October, and then the next November, like that, not that November, but a year later, I was at Legions Con. So that's how like wholly and completely like Legions took over my life in just a year. So
yeah.
2 years ago was my first Legions. Last year was my second, and man, I absolutely love it. You're right. There's no other toy show like it. It's absolutely incredible. It's like a family reunion.
And
Um, and
it's like it's got like a lot of different things going on because you have if you're lucky enough to go to intern for a day. There's that whole experience. There's GCon on Friday, which is this big reveal, and
mhm.
it's really that's the only thing going on Friday is GCon. And so like there's all of that, and then at that point they're setting up all the stuff in the hallways. Um, for me, I'm invited as a um not a vendor, what do they call them? An exhibitor. I get an
Okay,
exhibitor badge and so I can go in and help out all the exhibitors when they're setting up Friday night, and, like, there's that whole
nice.
experience that at that point, and then the 2 days of Legions Con with all the other breakout sessions and different things going on. So, like, I'm heavily involved in it. I'm, like, honored to be sort of a guest at the event, and so a lot of these things just come together, and it's just, like, this amazing experience for me.
Yeah, I would. I hope to do intern for a day one day. That would be 1 year. That would be absolutely fantastic. Greg got to go this past year. He got
Yep.
invited, and he loved it. He thought it was just like fantastic. And
Yeah.
I'm so glad he got to go because he's like such a great guy. So maybe one day, maybe 1 year, I'll be able to go. I'm looking forward to it. And then to see the GCon live, that would be great. I'm typically traveling on Friday. I'm typically flying to New Jersey those times. So, but yeah, to be there in person and see it, that would be absolutely fantastic. So, we're wrapping up. We're getting close to the very end. So, do you have any collecting regrets? Do you ever get rid of anything you wish you hadn't, like first two waves of Mythic Legions?
No, but I didn't back the Kickstarter, so I don't have that first wave. Um, so that's probably my regret would be like I wish I had jumped in earlier into Legions. I got in around the um Coliseum wave. That might have been I th- what wave was the deluxe night in the first Templar. I think it was Coliseum wave.
I think you're right.
That was the way or no, Covenant of Shadows? or Coliseum. One of those two
You're gonna know
waves
better than I, so I'm gonna
is
defer to
when
you.
I got in. And so yeah, I like that's a regret is that I didn't. And I had known about I knew about them right from the beginning. Like I was, well aware of it, but I was I think just at the time just a little too focused on Star Wars and maybe a little too not like open up to like others, like to back in a Kickstarter at that point.
Yeah.
And that so I wish I would have jumped in a little bit earlier.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Has a friend ever gotten you into a toy line that you were otherwise were like completely uninterested in?
Oh yeah. This in the last like 2 years, Larry from the podcast has really gotten me hyped up about the like retail Transformers. The pretty
Oh
much
yeah.
when Studio 86 kind of got rolling and they were doing a lot, even in like the Siege line and stuff, they were doing a lot of like G1 style
Mhm.
figures. Um that really like pulled me in and it was Larry whose enthusiasm and just he would send pictures on our like private chat and just he really turned me on. And I'd started dabbling and then it just became like I'm pretty thoroughly collecting the current like whatever the most recent version of it like kind of like the G1 looks
Yeah.
have been for the retail stuff for Transformers.
That
And
stuff
I
is
just
incredible.
the trans like I didn't collect Masterpiece ever, but what Larry describes it as is like these new like especially like this new 86 Optimus Prime. Like a lot of
It's a
these
work of
newer
art.
figures, these retail figures are he said he describes them as like being like having like the engineering of these, they're like mini masterpieces and they're just a lot of fun to play
Yeah.
around with and transform. And it's one of those things like again, I didn't collect Transformers between I don't know, probably 1987 and 2020 or so. And so
Yeah.
it's like just having that fun experience of transforming these toys is just it adds a lot to like the collecting side of it. And it, like it's the same reason I love Legions and Glyos. It's like there are toys you just naturally play with, manipulate,
Yep.
pop and swap, get creative with. And
Yep.
so like I like toys that I can play with.
Yeah, I'm fortunate enough that I work from home full time. I'm a designer for a university here, and so I work in one of the. I used to work in like the main office of advertising and marketing, but now I work for like a specific college within the university. So I'm a designer and I work from home, and I have to have thing. I have a work desk over there, and then I have my YouTube desk here, and I have to
Mhm.
have stuff on my desk that I can play with. So I have like the new '86 Bumblebee. It's on my desk. I play
Oh,
with
that
it. I have a
figure
yeah,
playing
he's
with that,
incredible.
it's so good.
Yeah, I have a little plunderling that I keep here on
Yep.
my desk. I have a couple of like Super 7 um Godzillas over there. Like I always need something to be fiddling with because I'm in meetings and I'm just sitting here listening and I'm playing with stuff. But yeah, the new 86 Transformers, he's right. Like your friend Larry is 100% right. I was into the Masterpiece line through the first, I think maybe I want to say probably maybe the first like 15 figures. I was waiting. Like I stopped when Hound was coming out. Hound was the one I was really looking forward to, but the prices were like creeping up. They were getting to where like the major releases were like they used to be like $100, but then they got to where they were like 225, 250, and I was like, this is higher than Hot Toys at the time. And
Mm,
I was like, I got to jump out. And but yeah, with the new 86 line, I have that Optimus. I saw that it was like tops on like your list
mhm.
like on the like your figures of the year list. Like what else? Like the Ironhide's really good. That Bumblebee is incredible. So and then I love the Transformers like retro collection that Walmart puts out in like just the recreations of like the old school like Transformers. They're so
Yep.
fun to play. So
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, all right. Last two questions. House is on fire. You can only grab one figure. What is it?
Um, right here is a custom that I picked up at Legion's Con.
Oh, I've seen that.
And
Yeah.
this is Von Burke Studios, Brian Burke,
Yeah.
and it's an astromech in a sort of Mythic Legions-y kind of style, or maybe Cosmic Legions or something, but just like a, like a crazy dark um horror kind of
Yeah.
looking version of it. and it's, you know, it's articulated. It's got a couple articulation points. Um, he had it 2 years ago, or, you know, he had it in 2023, and it wasn't for sale. And then he had it on his table, and it was, and I assumed it wasn't for sale, and then I found out it was, and I immediately bought it, and it's so awesome.
That's
Um,
incredible. Yeah,
and
I've seen that
so,
before.
yeah, this, because it,
Right.
you know, it kind of straddles all the worlds, you know.
Yeah.
It's part of the Mythic Legions community because Brian's mostly a Mythic
Mhm.
Legions guy, and this is something you would put with, like, if there was a custom Mythic Legions Sith, like he had a custom, like essentially like a Darth Maul, and um, like this would go right next to it, right with the Legion stuff. Oh, you
So
have it, or you have
yeah,
that? That's
I
the head.
bought that head. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
his blend of like what would Darth Maul look like if he was Vader. So it's got like
Yep.
parts of like the Vader helmet, and then it goes all the way around the back. I painted the head, and then this is the black armory experience
Yep.
body. So I bought this there. I was like, I'm gonna put that head, paint it,
Nice.
and then this is like I
Perfect.
want to say this is probably like the Headless Horseman cape, I think, from like the very first release, and so Black Series lightsaber, and so yeah,
Nice.
I love, yeah, I love his little blend of like Star Wars horror and Mythic Legions. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
great. I love Brian. He's a really good dude. Awesome. Okay, so I skipped over one of my questions, but it's okay. If you had to, and I probably know the answer, if you had to sell it all, you have to sell it all, but you only get to keep one line. Would it be Mythic Legions?
It would be Four Horsemen
Oh,
Studios.
for yeah,
You know, like, I mean, if I had to specifically pick one, it would probably actually end up being Figura Obscura.
yeah.
But yeah, Legions, the Legion system.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I kind of figured that would be what it is. And then finally, let's end on a high note. What's your favorite thing about collecting?
This right here, hanging out, talking toys, the community, having, you know, like I don't think I really would be as into figures as I am if I didn't have the podcast and the friends and the Facebook community and the just the whole community aspect of it is really what keeps me going with it. You know, it kind of
Yeah.
just keeps me excited for it and talking about it and hanging out and going to Legion's Con and going to other conventions and seeing people and just, yeah, it's great.
Awesome. Yeah, that's definitely for me as well, because I remember there was a time when it was right before I aged out of collecting action figures. I think I was still like the oldest of my friends who were buying them and collecting them. And I remember for a long time I felt kind of like ostracized because I was still playing with toys or still, collecting action figures. And then it's funny because now it's the people that collect that bring me back to it and keep me in it, like you said. So it's where it was at a point in time, it kept me from having friends. Now I've met so many friends through
Mm.
that I'll have like forever, and then meeting new people like yourself, taking the time to come on the show. So awesome. Well, thank you so very much. I really appreciate you sitting down and being one of my very first few guests on this new video series. I honestly can't thank you enough. Didn't know if you were gonna, even respond to me when I messaged you. But and when you said yes, I was like literally like dancing around my kitchen. I know it sounds weird, but I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. So I can't thank you enough.
Thanks for having me. Really
Yeah,
good time.
absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And I look forward to seeing. Are you going to make it out to any cons? Like, are you going to like Joe Fest or Toylanta or anything like that?
I wanted to go to ZoloCon. That was the one that I might have gone to, was ZoloCon, but my family's going to be traveling and going
Mhm.
skiing that weekend, and because this is supposed to be healed by then, like I'm like I'm not going to really ski until then, so like I'm we were very like excited to like pick that weekend.
Yeah.
So that's not going to happen. I could theoretically go down to New Jersey Toy Con New Jersey. There's one in April, I think. That could be on the table. But I will definitely be going to Shop the Curiosity. I forget the specific dates of that one. But I'll definitely go to that. That's a little closer.
Very cool. Yeah, I would love to make it to ZoloCon. It's a little too far north for me. I think it's in Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah, it is Philly.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a little too far north for me. Too close to
Yeah, it's a
travel
haul.
from. Yeah, that's a haul from Florida. So, well, thank you so very much. Please, everybody, make it a point to go over and check out Dorklair. Of course, you would. Why would you not? I mean, that's why you're here watching this. Check out Bill and his channel. It is absolutely fantastic. And like I said before, it's one of the things that you're one of the people that really influenced me to get in here and do this. So. Thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you guys for tuning in and watching. I super appreciate it. And please remember to check us out over at Instagram at Saturday Morning Toy Collector. I am your Saturday Morning Toy Collector. I'm your host, Mark, and I will see you in the toy aisles.